students. I would say how much more can be done in that area in terms of really embedding that entrepreneurial thinking so that people either are setting up their own businesses, or if they do go into other organizations, that they're thinking more as entrepreneurs and business owners and looking more at employment creation. I'm going to round off my own submission on this with a couple of initiatives that are very dear to my own heart, that I think if we could find many more organizations to do more of, would be a good thing. So at Bank of America, which is where I'm employed, we do have, Thomas Montag, who's in our global leadership, and Bernard Mensah, who's also in our global leadership, and Bernard is the president of EMEA, came together to form this program where we actually employ, we go into universities in Africa. Since we started the program in 2015, we've gone to 10 different countries. And what we do is we go and recruit interns. We recruit interns from those universities. So far, we've recruited over 242 to be precise. Of those 242, we've given almost 150 of them jobs in that time. And in that time, our top university by far is University of Lagos. And then we have, we go for quality. This is not a charitable initiative in terms of the caliber of individuals that we hire for. And so we, across all of the 10 countries, University of Lagos stands out. This year, we have 7 of our, of our 32 target employees who will come from the University of Lagos. And when we hire these people, we hire them into investment banking, global markets, technology, and then in risk functions, etc. So they are not taxi drivers, they're not security guards, they're proper people who are coming into our cohort. I'm delighted to say that in this cohort so far, we've gotten the first class of vice presidents. We've seen internal mobility. And if you understand the starting salary of these companies, these individuals in investment banking, and the world-class education that they would get, you can imagine the ripple effect it has on them and their families. Now, what I want to tell you is our students come in there and they stand head to head with students from Harvard, Oxford, Durham, some of the finest universities in the entire world. And they have a slight adjustment period, sometimes, not all the time, and they absolutely compete at the same level. So it is important that we can find ways to get many more of these students to go learn this experience and come back. I'm delighted also to tell you that it's not everybody that comes on this program that stays there, and which is our intention. We don't want to hire everyone from this program, but we figure that with the numbers that we're dealing with, everyone that we can take into this program and give them world-class training to think like a global leader and act like a global leader creates a ripple effect that is beyond calculation. And then personally, I set up Adara Foundation in 2016. And what I wanted to do with that was recognizing that in these problems that I talked about earlier, really the lack of socioeconomic development that we deserve for our country, there are 2 gaps. There's the lack of engagement of women as active agents in socioeconomic development, and there's the underutilization of our youth, I should say. So the foundation focuses particularly on skills training in those sectors. And we purposely look at improving their digital skills and their markets, their employment or work friendliness. But more than that, we always focus on market creating innovations. So looking at ways that we can help women and youth make more businesses, create more opportunities for others is another important intervention that we have. So far, we have over, in that time since 2016, we've had over 14,000 beneficiaries across our different programs. So I realize the UNILAG team know how passionate I am about these topics. I think that there's so much more we can do with other corporates, with other individuals, with the government, and with international universities and agencies. And these are just some of my submissions. And I'm very keen, as always, to help in whichever way I can to move this dialogue forward by action. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. I'm going to ask the members of the audience to please put your questions in the question and answer box, and we will take them later. I think we should hear all the submissions and then have a great discussion at the end of it. I'm now going to ask Professor Camille Omotesho to give us his 15-minute submission. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. Can you hear me well? Can you see the screen as well?
Yes, but maybe you will put it on.
Yeah, I will do that now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. It's my pleasure to share the platform with my honorable colleagues, and thank you very much, Professor Ogunsola, for the warm welcome. And the opening gambit has been really, really beneficial. I think it sets the scene perfectly. So probably I can say half of my job is done with that opening. So there will be some bullet points or slides that I will skip. It's my pleasure to join this forum. Being an alumnus of this university, it's always a good homecoming whenever you are invited to deliver a talk. As a starting point, the University of Derby collaborates a lot with the University of Lagos and some other institutions in the Global South. And I will be sharing with you my experience as an academic, as a leader in the higher education sector in the UK, and somebody who has been involved in the international collaboration for over 15 years now, particularly within the African setting. Just to put it in context, what are the key drivers of future thinking or futures thinking? Because there are two sides to the theme. The first one is futures thinking, and the second one is what we call international collaboration. So if we look at the situation prior to COVID, those who are in leadership within the higher education sector, as well as in the industry and governmental organizations, there were certain things that were driving change across the spectrum. The first one is the need of the Gen Z generation, that is, those who were born in the mid to late 90s up until now. Majority of them are now becoming co-workers in their mid-20s, and the situation will continue. So what are their needs? What are their characteristics? How can we create places of employment that will meet these needs? They are technologically savvy, they are fast learners, very ambitious, they prefer flexible working, they cherish what we call work-life balance, they are really, really financially minded, want huge salary coming with perks, which is nothing bad. And research has shown that the majority of them will change their career altogether, maybe 2 or 3 times, or even more within their employment life. And closely associated with all these characteristics is they have a higher level of anxiety, which means that there's a little problem at hand. I think Professor Ogunsola mentioned the Industry 4.0 earlier on, which is another driving force, orchestrated by advancement in automation and data exchange in manufacturing technology. So when you hear terminologies such as Internet of Things, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and smart systems, all these are the driving force of what we call the fourth industrial revolution. So this is another driver for futures thinking. So anybody who wants to be future fit and future focused, either as an individual or organization, will have to factor this in for them to be relevant and thrive. Another one is net zero carbon targets, which is a very important element, particularly in the West now. And I don't think there is any hiding place for any government or business organization in this agenda. And the final one is globalization. And I cannot really put that across better than the way Ms. Ike put it, working for a global banking organization and then doing all this contribution in the global South, as well as skills development and talent hunting. That shows us that the world is a global village. Now, amidst all this, we have COVID that has now reshaped everything in terms of our thinking, in terms of the way we work. And COVID has actually come to accelerate most of those factors I mentioned earlier on. But because of time, I will pause there on the key drivers of futures thinking. Mind the gap. The gap, what's the gap? Is the chasm between what we produce and what the industry actually needs. Most of our graduates are unemployable. That is no secret. We know that. And some of those factors responsible for that have been mentioned. Outdated curriculum, out of touch teaching and learning models, staff development issues, enterprise and entrepreneurship that we have not infused adequately into the way we teach and the way students learn. The role to be played by research, innovation, and knowledge exchange. All these are really important. And I will be preaching to the converted if I start going into the details. We are all aware of that. However, as an accountant, I decided to start with the triple bottom line of corporate reporting, which involves the planet, the people, and as well as what we can term in this era as something that is driving the economy in a very special way, and it's a global one for that matter. So, which is profit. So, initially, maybe in the 70s, in the 60s, even the 80s, the real thing was profit. As long as the bottom line adds up, then we are home and dry. But events in the last 3 decades or thereabout have actually shown us that no, business are not just there to make or to lay the pocket of their owners. That goal will not be achieved unless they demonstrate their passion and care for the planet, as well as for the people that they interact with, the key stakeholders. That has metamorphosed into what we call ESG now, which is the environmental, social, as well as the governance related issues in the corporate world. So issues relating to environmental performance, organizations really, really want to value it, and they want to report it, and they want to demonstrate that they are actually a force to be reckoned with in that area. Also issues relating to who you hire, the fairness in the process, diversity and inclusion, child labor, all those issues, well-being of the employees, being just and fair to all the major stakeholders, not just the shareholder. So if you demonstrate that you are actually taking all this seriously, then the economic performance can be ensured. The long-term sustainability of your entity will be guaranteed to a reasonable extent. Now coming back home as a University of Derby, and in fact, indeed, most institutions, particularly in the global north, will ensure that external validation are not relegated at all. They are in the front line of their strategy and their performance-related issues as well. As a university, we pride ourselves in having all those accreditations that matter. And for those who are listening to me who are familiar with particularly business education, they say, hang on, Camille, one is still standing out there. There's AACSB is not there. That's exactly what we are working towards as an institution. And it's really, really front in our agenda as an institution. So, and we have similar bodies within the Nigerian sector. We should try our best to ensure that the local, regional, and national accreditations are taken on board, and the global one for that matter. And I was very delighted when I attended a session about 2-3 months ago, jointly organized by AACSB and the Chartered Association of Business School and the South African equivalent. It was a global conference, and I saw business schools from Nigeria being accredited on AACSB. That means a lot. So more of that is what we need, so that you can have that stamp of recognition, which is global in nature. Also the professional associations in engineering, in accountancy, in law, and in environmental sciences, all those areas, we need those badges to demonstrate that we are where our contemporaries are, and we are not left behind the curve. Speak a bit more about our industrial engagement. Before I mention the industry, I think we engage a lot with regional bodies that are governmental in nature. I think Professor Ogunsola mentioned what she termed the quadruple helix earlier on. Yeah, that is really important. Engagement with the region, as well as the civil society, and then the business units within that environment is really, really crucial. We work with IBM, Unilever, Deloitte, Bosch, Cadbury, just to mention but few, including professional bodies and professional organizations. What do we do with these organizations? They are kind enough to sit on our industry advisory panel or board, which we ensure that every discipline has got one. What will they be doing? I mentioned earlier on that curriculum that are outdated. They will give their insight into making the curriculum as robust as possible, future focused, and employment friendly. They will come to deliver guest lecture master classes to relevant students. They will come and attend employment fair organized by each discipline. And they really feed into the structure we use in the university to ensure that students are already employment ready by the time they are graduating. We do collaborate with them on knowledge transfer partnership and research issues relating to their organizations, and it's a kind of it's of mutual benefit actually. So our students who are studying for MBA, DBA, Prof, DEng, MEng, because all these degrees are industry related, so they can have opportunities to work on live projects and live problems, so they will benefit as an organization, and our students can have their degree, which they deserve. Also, we put together some programs that we badge on their names. We can have Rolls-Royce bachelor degree in what? In project management, or something like an apprenticeship model. So these are really working very well for us, and it works very well in this climate, and there's nothing stopping us from doing exactly the same in the global south. The strategic collaboration aspect of it, again, from our experience as an institution, we engage in what we call collaborative online international learning, COIL. We do that across the continent, actually. Students from Brazil, from Indonesia, from Nigeria, from South Africa, from New Zealand. As long as we have collaborative agreement with that institution, we pull them together in groups, and they work on live projects, and they are certificated for this project because it counts as something like a micro credential that they can actually add to their degree certification, and this stands them out. We also do collaborative research. I think 2 or 3 years ago, we did one with the other universities and University of Lagos on entrepreneurship. Student and staff mobility in terms of exchange programs, 2 weeks, 1 month, 1 semester, 1 year. And some of them, the credit will count as long as we've done the mapping prior to the program happening. And finally, academic partnership, maybe 2+2, 3+1, or even joint award of a particular degree. That will be the final layer if the partnership progresses. And we have a host of institutions in Africa with whom we collaborate on this kind of arrangements. Finally, I've deliberately put this title, "Are we serious about strategic collaboration?" Not to say that we are not serious about it. I just want to ignite a kind of provocation, which is what academics do. How do we ensure this is done? And it's actually built around the quadruple helix mentioned by Professor Ogunsola earlier on. So building external reputation as individual organizations and in collaboration with the government, with businesses, with the civil society. This is really crucial. We can't do it alone. Exploring the horizon nationally and internationally. What unit of our institution is dedicated for that? And how are they performing? What are the KPIs? Are they delivering on this? Strategic position is really important. We can be jack of all trade. We can be excellent in everything. And those of you who are familiar with institutions in Europe or America, you mention one institution and you can count 1, 2, 3 areas that are their areas of strength. And they really position themselves to ensure that that is the case at all times. Getting the support of alumni. This is really done in the top institutions, the Oxbridge of this world, the Yale and most American institutions, actually. They can have a pro-vice chancellor in charge, or vice president in charge of what? In charge of that. Seeking funding and endowment from successful alumni. We cannot overemphasize that because they are scattered across the globe, making us proud wherever they are, and they are willing to actually contribute their own quota, but do we reach out to them? And finally, whatever we do, transparency and accountability is really, they are really, really key, because you can win grants, you can win collaboration, but if you are not accountable sufficiently, if you are not transparent about all this, they will just fall like a pack of cards, because nobody really wants to deal with institutions that are not accountable or transparent in their dealings. So I think on that note, I thank the organizer for inviting me. I will stay around, and I hope we have the opportunity to discuss further and ask and answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Omotesho. That was very thought-provoking. I will now go on to, at the end of this, I'll give an overview of everything that people have said so that questions can come up. So right now, I will ask Dr. Mehul Sangraicha, the founder of founder and chief executive of Learning Possibilities, to please take the floor. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, and my thanks to the University of Lagos and the organizers for giving me an opportunity to present at this wonderful webinar. I wanted to share some slides on my presentation, so hopefully that is visible. And what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about this from the perspective of my company, Learning Possibilities. We are a global education technology provider, and so see the transformations that are going on in the higher education sector across the world. And what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about, some of those and why they're happening, what are the drivers for this, and also what are some of the outcomes and scenarios that we should be planning for going forward. So as has been said before, we've had an unprecedented pandemic for over the last year that has completely changed everything that has been happening. And one of the key things that it has done is taught us how we should be thinking about education when our learners are at home and our universities are shut. And this is not just a scenario for today, but I think this has now become the way everybody will have to think about education going forward. And in that scenario, what we now have learned is two things. One is that the transformation that has been happening slowly over years has now suddenly become very accelerated. And in that acceleration, the way that we learn and the way that we present materials, we design courses, we get students engaged, has completely changed. And so this is the backdrop of our current scenario. Now, in that backdrop, there is also another backdrop, which is also very interesting. And we picked up on this a little bit, but I just want to talk a little bit more about this. That today, working from home has become the normal for a number of reasons. And companies like Twitter have actually made it the way that all their employees work around the world. And the thing that it does is that it completely changes the dynamics of the world of work. Because today, if I'm working from home, whether I'm in London or in Lagos, it doesn't really matter. And so we're now having competition in a global workforce, whereas before I might have looked at employing people within a 10-mile radius of my office. So today, even as a medium-sized company, we have employees in 5 countries around the world. And the thing that we've realized is it levels the playing field. Even those who perhaps might be physically disabled, those who might have issues coming into work because of childcare or any other reason are suddenly now part of the workforce. And as a result, we've now had to change the way that we hire people, that we train people. And in that, we've realized that their digital skills, their entrepreneurial skills, thinking out of the box, being self-started, being self-motivated, are as important as their academic skills, because these are the skills they're going to need to be at home and carry on a day-to-day basis. So what we are seeking has suddenly changed. And what we're also seeing is that when we get employees, that those employees are now asking for at least a few days at home. And so as a result, if that is not something we're prepared to offer, then it is difficult to hire the kind of people we want. Now, for us as an employer, why would we want to do that? Well, if you think about what this means, it means you get a bigger talent, a pool talent, talent of pool where you can actually recruit from. You get, a cost base that is different to your own, and your real estate, your property costs go down significantly because people are not coming in every day. And when you put that together, you suddenly become more competitive and better as a company. And so this, I think, is now going to be the second reason why transformation in the university space is needed. So what is transformation? I think it's important to understand this. In the old normal, people used to go to a physical place to do a physical course in that place at a time and go through a structured process. They got there because they'd gone through a course of study, applied for a course, got onto it, and so on. And that course was largely led by an instructor, and in many cases, because of geographies, competition was limited. In the new world, people have started to realize that they can actually learn from home. Learning from home suddenly brings the convenience of learning, perhaps even whilst you're studying, whilst you're on maternity leave, whilst you're doing something else. You do it at a time of your choosing, so you don't even have to be in the same time zone. And suddenly, the learning is centered around you so that you don't have to follow a structured course. You might actually do modules over a period of time and build that up into a course. And as a result of this, one of the big scenarios in this is price, because being able to do courses online means you can do them from anywhere around the world. And so, price is a factor, the institution and its reputation is a factor, the way the course is designed and delivered is a factor. And all of this starts to make a difference to the numbers and types of students that you recruit. But then thinking about why that transformation is at all possible, I think it's important to realize the role technology plays in all of this. And today, we have cloud technology that is global, that is scalable, and it's ready, which means we don't have to build infrastructure in order to be able to do this. And also we have a wide range of devices, whether it's mobile on 3G or laptops on Wi-Fi, they're all able to receive and send, content, resources, material. And so many of these platforms also now offer offline capability. There is proctoring for exams so that you can actually monitor students while they're doing exams. And we have increased analytics. We're now able to see how students are going through the course, how they're performing, whether they complete the course, they need encouragement, and so on. So there is actually, a lot of good technology available that makes this possible. And does it work? Well, all the results that are coming out are incredibly positive. And one of the reasons for that is we've started to evolve the pedagogy that is necessary for online and distance learning. No longer are we just making PDFs of our textbooks and sending them, but we're beginning to learn how to engage and interact and encourage and support on a distance learning model, which I think is absolutely key. So taking that a little forward, how can universities participate? Well, one of the great features now is that the technology is not only available, but you don't have to build it. The technology is, these platforms to deliver courses and, engage students and provide analytics are readily available. And one of them, edX, for example, alone has over 50 million learners doing courses. As Learning Possibilities, we brought out a platform for the same reason. And what we see is that there is there is now an ability to do this relatively quickly and easily once you have understood how to deliver courses. We had a little discussion earlier about things being obsolete, and that's absolutely right. I mean, things move at an incredible pace. And so the next thing I think that will change is that learning will become lifelong. And the lifelong learning will not only be from universities. I think there is going to be an an immense amount of competition from large companies and other providers. And I've put some examples there about those, but also about micro-credentials, getting certifications for various things. And I think all of these will play a very important part going forward, because people now want to keep up with technology and changes as they happen, but they want to do so in a way that means that they're able to do that at their own time, at their own pace, and get the recognition they need for this, for both their employment, but also maybe their future employment. And so coming on to what does learning look like, or what will learning look like? And I've just got a couple of slides around this. So the first is the question of how have we got here? And one of the things that has been happening for over the last 10 years is MOOCs, massively open online courses. Many of them have struggled with this idea of exams because when they started, the idea of good proctoring wasn't in place. But what they have done is whetted the appetite of so many people to be able to do a course at the institution of their choosing whenever they want to do it. And they were able to do this despite their circumstances. They may not have been able to travel to that country or afford the accommodation or afford the tuition fees, but all of that has now changed. And so in this online education, what has suddenly started to happen is the idea of not doing a complete degree at one time, but perhaps doing modular degrees or doing certifications or micro-credentials that over a period of time contribute to a bigger qualification. And so I believe that the new normal will be for higher education will be a combination of both in-person and online or blended learning. And this has already started to happen. So just thinking a little bit about what this blended learning might look like. What we see globally is firstly the idea of flipped classrooms, where students are given work to do in their own time, and the online or collaborative time is used for problem solving, giving them both a critical skill, but also using that time for actually application of knowledge as opposed to acquisition of knowledge. The second thought about blended learning is to combine your education with work. In the previous presentation, we saw collaboration with industry and work placements. And I think this is going to become normal as well, where you are doing an element of work for a company, but at the same time, also an element of study. And what that does is bring life to your studies and real life scenarios. And the third is this idea of international collaborations, that you can be at one university, but spend a semester attending another university online, and therefore get a wider range of learning as well as a wider range of opportunities or courses. So I think this is going to be normal. So what of the future? And I've put 7 points there, which I think are the things that we should think about when we think about the future of higher education. The first is that competition is now global. This is competition in terms of people looking for universities. It is possible to attend universities online at a distance and do courses over a longer period of time at your own time. And this flexibility actually makes higher education far more accessible. I think also we need to prepare graduates for global opportunities. These exist today if our graduates are ready for them. And I think it's important to think about this not from the perspective of just today, but how do we support them as they grow into their careers through this idea of lifelong learning and continuous development. I also think that once you have this sort of structure, this idea of attending university at a certain age and going through a certain route become less important. It should be possible at any age to enroll into a university and do a course. And I think these opportunities have now started to happen. Also in the case of micro-credentials, where I might want to do a 3-week course in a subject just to get knowledge and some certification to show I've done it, but I don't want to do a 2-year course. And this, again, becomes, I think, very important. So if you want to do all of this, then a model that is blended where it can be online, on campus, or a mixture of both is very important, because that attracts the pool that wants to do this and gives those opportunities. And lastly, I think we need to appreciate, again, as the last speaker said, that if we want our graduates to go into employment, then we have to be giving them the skills that they need for blended working. If they're working from home, they're working remotely, they need to be able to collaborate, have digital skills, have an entrepreneurial mindset, be able to work on their own, be motivated, self-starters. There's lots and lots of skills that employers are now looking for because they're trusting employees to be at home and to work from home. And I think it's important that we find a way to put those into our courses. So I'm going to stop there for now. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward to questions. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
We can't hear you, Professor Ogunsola.
It's working now. Yes, sorry, I had problems getting this to work. Thank you very much for your insightful presentation, Dr. Mahul. I will now quickly go on to the next presenter, and that is Dr. Gerald Houston, who is beside me here from DAAD, the German, I don't know how to pronounce DAAD, but I'll leave him to do that. So he's going to give us the next 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much to the organizers for having me here. With my brief remarks, I want to bring in a little bit the political sphere, because there are so many specialists when it comes to higher education who look at higher education from the scientific angle, but we have to be aware, and I think we are aware, that at the end, when it comes to money, it's the political sphere, it's the ministries, it's some organizations who are who have the capacity and the right to allocate, for example, money to do something in higher education. And therefore, the title of my remarks is therefore Futures Thinking and Strategic Collaborations from the Perspective of the African Union and the European Union. The Agenda 2063 is Africa's continental strategic framework to achieve inclusive and sustainable development through, and I quote, well-educated citizens and skills revolution underpinned by science, technology, and innovation. End of quote. This goal is furthermore supported by the African Union's Continental Education Strategy for Africa for the period 2016 to 2025, which aims, among others, to revitalize and expand tertiary education, research, and innovation to address continental challenges and promote global competitiveness. So all in all, I think we can say that education features very highly in the African Union's policies. Since long, Africa and Europe have been working together to develop high quality and inclusive higher education systems, to exchange experience in matching skills with the demand of the labor market, and to support collaboration and exchange between students and scientists within and between the European and African continents. And if you look very deep into it, we don't have the time for that, but if you do it, I think you come to the conclusion that investing in skills and the young generation has been identified both by the African Union and the European Union as key for sustainable social and economic development. Now, there are a big number of key challenges in this whole topic, and I just want to highlight 3 of them. The first one, considering the predominantly young population in Africa, education and skills need to be placed at the forefront of an African-European partnership aimed at building a prosperous, safe, and sustainable world. Second, higher education plays a crucial role in shaping the 2 continents' future by providing prospects to young people, educating the leaders of tomorrow, and supporting economic and social development. And third, both continents, Africa and Europe, face comparable challenges in the field of higher education, like quality, providing study courses relevant to the labor market, the role of higher and vocational learning in the developing of knowledge and skills, mobility and international partnerships, staff development, and creating an inclusive and accessible higher education system for all. In October 2019, in Brussels, Belgium, there was a very big conference with around 400 participants, which was organized by the African Union Commission, the European Union Commission, and 4 higher education stakeholder organizations of the European Union member states, which were the DAAD, or some say DAAD, which is the German Academic Exchange Service, for which I work. It was the British Council. Great Britain was at that time still a member of the European Union. It was Campus France and the Dutch organization NUFIC. The conference highlighted the importance of collaboration in higher education between the 2 continents and provided, inter alia, the following 5 sector-specific recommendations. Sector 1, higher education institutions as job generators. We have already highlighted the issue that we have a very young population in Africa. The number of young people aged 18 to 23 in Africa will increase from 141 million approximately in 2017 to almost 200 million in 2030. There were 15 million African students in 2017. This figure is predicted to double by 2030. And their professional integration should be a key issue at the heart of national policy priorities of African countries and their partners. And the conference recommended that we have to ensure that cooperation with the private sector is an integral part of higher education institution strategy and vision, and that we have to take into account, in particular, sustainability and gender. The second sector which was discussed was capacity building and curriculum development through international partnerships and innovations. Useful populations without access to higher education will be a generational loss. Somebody today even said it's a kind of time bomb. It was our guest of honor in the morning. So it's at least a generational loss. Africa needs students with skills for competitiveness, the ability to innovate, and student entrepreneurs who can be job creators. Academic capacity building through international partnerships, whether regional or global, has the potential to provide these benefits. And at the conference, it was recommended we have to facilitate transnational education partnerships between European and African universities. And these partnerships, they should provide an enabling environment for mobility. They should be based on reciprocity, which are proven to boost engagement and research output among academics. And last but not least, they should provide better learning experiences which furnish graduates with the skills that will result in improved life chances. The third sector which was discussed was quality assurance and relevance of study programs. Relevant and high quality study programs cater to the increased focus on employability and can be locally, regionally, and globally competitive. Harmonized systems allow for enhanced trust, the recognition of degrees and qualifications, and hence for the mobility of trained individuals across the continent. And here was the recommendation: we have to streamline and we have to further promote the Pan-African Quality Assurance Accreditation Framework, also known as PAQAF, and the implementation of its instruments at all levels involving all key stakeholders. Fifth sector, building skills and capacity in the next generation of university staff. Increasing numbers of students in Africa have access to higher education with growth rates of over 50% across the region. However, the number progressing to PhD can be as low as 2% of undergraduate students. As a result, staff-student ratios have risen to over 55:1 in several higher education sectors, which also makes the workload in the sector less attractive to new graduates. What shall we do here? The recommendations of the conference was support the development of the next generation of high quality academic and institutional leaders by facilitating access to practice-based continual professional development in the workplace. That was number one. Number two, purposeful investment in teaching resources. Number three, stronger collaboration with industry. Number four, stronger pedagogic skills development. And number five, making use of interregional and international partnerships to gain knowledge and exposure to new approaches. I think I've almost used up my time. Okay, so then unfortunately I have to skip the fifth sector, and maybe you allow me 1 or 2 more minutes to round my remarks up, because now briefly I want to talk about the fact that, of course, not only since this conference, but long before that, different organizations in Africa, in Europe, of course, they had programs and they still have programs which address these sectors and who even address the recommendations already. And let it be the World Bank with the excellence centers, let it be British Council, etc., and so forth. Let me just allow me, since I'm from DAD, also to mention 2 or 3 programs which I think are very relevant for this our discussion. Altogether, we have around 23 programs for institutional cooperations between German universities and African universities. And I want to mention the first one, which is called the University Business Partnership. And this partnership always involves one German university, at least one German university, at least one African university, but better 2 or 3, plus business partners in the African country or countries and in Germany. So, and this triggers the exchange between industry and the universities. The second one I want to mention is our program for SDG graduate schools, Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs of the United Nations. So DAD has funds to finance, to support graduate schools in this area. And we are very happy that since January this year, we are supporting one of such an SDG graduate school here at University of Lagos. It's situated at the Center for Housing and Sustainable Development, and it's a cooperation between the University of Lagos, the Technical University of Berlin, and the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. So allow me one last one, because that's also a very interesting and important area, which is higher education management. No university can be good if it does have a bad administration. We need good administrators, and DAD also offers a program where we offer measures like training courses, dialogue events, projects, partnerships, which foster professionalization of institutional management processes. And again, we are very proud and very happy that just since 1st of October, since some days, we are supporting the so-called Nigerian Innovative Research Management Structures project, which brings 3 universities in Nigeria, the University of Lagos, University of Ibadan, and Afe Babalola University, in dialogue on innovative higher education strategies, together with the University of Cologne in Germany. So some of the sectors and some of the needs have, I think, already been addressed, not only by DAD, by other organizations too, but still there is a lot to do, especially in view of the high proportion of young people on the African continent. And this situation will surely go on for quite a long time. And these young people, they need to be properly educated for the sustainability and for the future of the African continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Houston. The last speaker will be Dr. Henrique Floru-Bosch from the Center for African Studies at the University of Michigan. Dr. Henrique?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and let me try to share my screen. And then if you can tell me if you can see it well, and if you can hear me well. Yes? Again, thank you very much. It's my privilege to be part of this occasion, and I want to convey my gratitude to the organizers, especially Dr. Ismail Ibrahim, and to the moderator and to the previous presenters for their thoughtful and inspiring remarks. My name is Henrique Floru-Bosch, and I work at the University of Michigan as Associate Director of the African Studies Center, which administers the University of Michigan African Presidential Scholars Program. So I'm speaking then from the position of being located at a Global North institution in the US, an institution that facilitates faculty exchange programs along the lines of some of the previous presenters mentioned. I will briefly introduce the program later, but let's first take a step back and consider higher education as a future-oriented practice and mindset. I want to argue that universities increasingly understand their core activities of research and teaching as needing to challenge the present and change the future, as my own university puts it. In theory, if not in practice, universities are well equipped to shape the lives of future generations by educating youth to be critical thinkers and problem solvers, and by researching intractable global challenges to come up with evidence-based and socially just solutions. Now, the ways in which universities don't live up in practice to these expectations are well known, and I'm grateful to my fellow presenters for listing many of these. They include indeed real obstacles in the form of resource constraints, lack of investment in R&D and research infrastructure, continuing constraints of access to higher education, while at the same time issues posed by massification and the unemployment of graduates. But in line with the theme of today's panel, I want to speak to some of the strategic choices that Global North institutions can make to strengthen the forward-looking and future-shaping potential of universities. Some of these will be fairly concrete and already in place, like UMAPs, while others are ideas and plans at the moment. So I'll let you read this slide on your own, but this slide outlines in very basic terms higher education's potential for transformative change and positive future outcomes through the university's mission of teaching, research, and nowadays, very importantly, also service. This slide is very loosely based on 3 reports by USAID, World Bank, and UNESCO that I will list on the last slide. Again, we know that there are many challenges and ways in which higher education doesn't live up to its potential. And the COVID pandemic in particular has put some of the existing and continuing shortcomings in stark perspective. At the same time, there has been a fundamental shift in understanding of universities' mission towards the idea of them being institutions for the public good, that no longer just do knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but that have a real responsibility to address the economic, social, cultural, and environmental challenges in the world, and to find solutions that make society more just, inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable. It's also important to recognize that higher education as a sector contributes to growth also in purely economic terms, and that the disregard for higher education as an important part of the so-called development puzzle in the not too distant past isn't helpful at all. I'm referring, of course, to the disinvestment in universities in Africa for most of the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s, when the World Bank and other leading development policies emphasized primary and secondary education on the assumption that that would result in higher payoffs. However, we now know that all levels of education, including higher education, have positive and statistically significant effects on the growth rate of per capita income in African countries. One current example that was already mentioned here is the World Bank's African Centers of Excellence for Development Impacts, the ACE program, which is a key driver in leveraging higher education for economic growth. The rationale for ACE and second ACE is that the higher education sector, if appropriately strengthened and funded, is best positioned to bring about innovation and high quality research-based solutions to local challenges. And also that higher education benefits from collaboration to achieve economies of scale in the use of facilities, equipment, and staff in specialized fields. Other intra-Africa networks of higher education institutions and other stakeholders, for example, the PASET platform, highlight similar rationales and emphasize the importance of Africa-based agenda setting to identify research and other priorities, pooling in northern partners only as needed and relevant. So I want to shift to the other part of the equation here, the future. And as you all already know, is that if history tells us one thing about the future, is that we don't actually know what the future will look like in any detail. We know that what shapes the future is contingency, individual agency, and power struggles to make one or another vision of the future a reality, with all of this going on under conditions not of one's own making. Now, the reason I bring up this truism is to say that we can't bet on any one discipline, technical challenge, or innovation, or likewise any one country or continent as the solution for the future. This, I think, is an argument to not define the contributions of higher education in too narrow disciplinary terms. And it's also an argument against national or regional interests for setting the agenda for higher education. Rather, this should be a global and collaborative endeavor. On demographic grounds alone, it's very likely indeed that the next Einstein will be African, but there's no way to know what field a next Einstein will be in, nor at what institution they'll be studying. What we do know is that higher education institutions everywhere need to be strong, not just in a few countries and not just in a few fields. Let me be very clear, this is not to say that we shouldn't prioritize, but what we should prioritize is strong, robust higher education institutions that are connected globally through collaboration so as to get benefits of scale and to be able to specialize and complement each other's strengths. I do want to look a little bit at some of the current trends that observers of higher education in Africa have noticed as shaping the present, and for which there's every indication that they will be relevant in the near future as well. I already mentioned the importance of global and international thinking and practice. Others are the increasing reliance on virtual, open, distance, and e-learning modes of instruction, and the urgent necessity to make these modes accessible in terms of infrastructure and cost. That brings up the reality of globally unequal power and economic relations, which are by no means on their way out, as the COVID pandemic and vaccine disparities have shown. One of the many ways such inequalities manifest in higher education in particular is through funding, access, infrastructure challenges experienced by many universities on the continent. So with all of this by way of background, I want to turn to the theme of strategic partnership and the importance of strategic planning in shaping the future we want, in making into reality the possibilities that exist but that won't materialize themselves. A key insight here that I'm drawing on is from Adam Habib, South African thinker and university chancellor, previously at Wits University and currently of SOAS. In a recent piece, he argues for internationalization based on institutions rather than individuals. His argument is as follows: after noting the excessively high percentage of international students, specifically from India and China, who do not return to their home countries after their studies abroad, he notes, and I quote, "The solution to this challenge is not some retreat to autarky or closure of national borders. Rather, it is to think through an internationalization and transnational education strategy that centers more on institutions and less on individuals. And this involves co-curriculation, co-teaching, and ultimately co-credentialing." Let me turn to a concrete example at my own university here. The idea of connecting opportunities for individuals with strengthening institutional capacities is central to U of M's African Presidential Scholars Program, which was established in 2008. And you can see here its key features and the program statistics to date. For a US-based program, UMAPS is really unique in its disciplinary breadth and its longevity, because it's been around now for 14 years, which is much longer than comparable programs in the US. I want to stress the fact that the core eligibility requirement for the UMAPS program is that the candidate be an early or mid-career faculty member teaching or doing research at a university or college in Africa. The focus on faculty members, academic staff, has been a key feature of the program since its inception, and it's very intentional. So when UMAPS was being developed in 2008, based on conversations between University of Michigan university leaders and university leaders in Ghana and South Africa, they made it clear that focusing on academic staff would enable us to have the broadest and most meaningful impact. Because faculty members are the ones who teach students and train postgraduates, who are able to serve as PIs on research grants, and who can implement curricular changes and change departmental culture, and who become chairs and deans. The investment that the UMAPS program makes in academic staff, this benefits not only individuals, but ultimately benefits the UMAPS scholars' home institutions, colleagues, and students. We're very proud of the achievements of UMAPS fellows after their time in Ann Arbor, and in recent years have become much more intentional about strengthening the UMAPS alumni network and the possibilities that offers. Very briefly, one of the metrics of success we use is the average number of peer-reviewed publications per UMAPS scholar in the 3 years before and after participation in the program. And in our most recent evaluation report, we saw an increase there of 32% from 1.9 to 2.6 peer-reviewed publications. there seems to be something going on at my university. So I want to show you the next slide, and I'm sorry for the noise. These two final examples. Seems that we have a fire alarm. This is the beauty of being on Zoom. So what I would hope that you can do, because I need to evacuate the building, is that you look up the Gala platform for sustainability case studies and the Language Resource Center that's also linked here, that are two future directions in which we are trying to develop the UMAPS program. Thank you for your time. Yes, we're evacuating because there's a fire alarm. I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we got most of it. Thank you very much. So we have come to the end of the talks by our different panelists, and I'm just going to try and go through, in a nutshell, what we have heard. Ms. Yvonne Ike set the tone, gave us some statistics about that there are 10 million Africans between 19 to 22, Nigerians between age of 19 to 22, and that 60% of them are unemployed, and only 2 million get to the university. It's also very clear that the public sector, government, cannot fund universities. And if we're going to really move into the future, we have to involve more strategically the private sector. And one of the methods she talked about was about tax relief for educational institutions as well as programs. The idea of having, and these tax relief should be for corporate and individual people, as well as the clearinghouse where we could have different programs that are there and people can actually go shop for them like you do for a lot of charity. The take home from her talk was about, one, that the private sector needs to be a lot more involved with higher education, that we need to partner with some of the digital education sectors like the Coursera. We have to do more intentional international collaborations, do more visiting lectureships and so on, have more involvement of industry and the international world in material and case study development that are from Africa, so that they're contextualized to our situations. And that for our entrepreneurship programs, we need to grow that. That's very clear, that all students should be at least entrepreneurial in mindset. And also for us to encourage market creating innovation. She spoke a little bit about the African Internship program by the Bank of America that has trained about 242 of our students, and that it's not a charity organization. I mean, it's not a charity program, but these students stand shoulder to shoulder with students from universities such as Oxford, Cambridge, and other international groups. She also mentioned the Adara Foundation that's looking more into digital literacy, looking at the impact of women in the workplace. We also then had Professor Omotesho, who spoke about some of the key drivers of the futures, the Generation Z, who are very tech savvy, who are ambitious, who like flexible hours, do not like the fixed kind of employment, but on the flip side, tend to be quite anxious. Their needs need to be taken into consideration. For us to move into that 24th industrial revolution or join the conversation properly, we need to ensure that our courses are fit for purpose. And that requires that we have international and local accreditations for our courses, as well as ensure that professionals that are in these fields, both locally and internationally, also accredit the courses. Part of this is to ensure that we have courses that train students that are employable. He suggests that we should have on our advisory committees industry advisors who look at our curricula and can flag those that are no longer useful. We need to make sure that our curricula are future focused and our students are employment ready, and that our curricula are development friendly. He talked a little bit more about the research curriculum and about having strategic collaborations and academic partnerships with international groups. He recognized that we have started, but that we need to pursue this a little more aggressively. That it is important, his takeaway, that we must build our external reputation. We must explore the horizon both nationally and internationally, and position ourselves strategically to be able to leapfrog into the future. And we need to get the support of alumni. And that starts from ensuring that they have a great time while they're in UNILAG, and that we nurture them and nurture that relationship. But that irrespective of all this, we must be transparent and accountable, and that this is required irrespective of where the funds are coming from. Professor Mehul talked a little bit more about how COVID-19 has accelerated the futures and has changed us forever, and how working from home has also changed, has been a transformational issue, and which we need to look at, and has also meant that certain skills need to be acquired by our students and also by staff. The digital skills, thinking outside the box, that these are as important as academic skills. And the other thing that COVID has done is that it has made the world a global talent pool, that we now, our students have to compete with people from everywhere else. And that this transformation occurring has been aided really by technology. So we're moving from institution-centered learning to learner-centered learning, from where we have fixed, learning is occurring in a fixed place, but now time and location are flexible because technology has enabled us to do this. Where we had instructor-led, it's now convenient-led, because students can take these courses at their convenience because of technology. And there was limited competition before. The competition is high because it's global. We also recognize that the future of education is going to change. The university as we know it today is going to change. Learning is going to be more blended. We are going to have a lot more MOOCs. We'll have flipped learning. We'll have, we're also going to see that the competition, as I said earlier, is global. And graduates will also have global opportunities. So universities in Nigeria that will lose students to other universities that can actually reach across the digital divide. Already there are platforms to assist. Then we had the fourth speaker. That was Dr. Houston, who spoke a little bit more about the political sphere and looked at the African Union 2063 agenda and recognized that certain things need to be done. We need to invest more in skills, which is key for sustainable development. We certainly need private sector engagement, and this keeps coming up in every single of our speakers. Capacity building, curriculum development, these are constant themes. Our curriculum has to be more nimble and more responsive, and we need to engage industry in this curricula. Students, of course, entrepreneurial, and again, we need to have quality assurance of our programs. Skills, more skills, and more skills. This keeps coming up. One of the things that was also noted was that only about 2% of our students in Africa go on to a PhD, which means that we have fewer people at the advanced academic levels, which means those teaching are fewer and the workload is high. So we have to find ways to bridge this. He then talked about, and also that there has to be more support for pedagogy that are both international and regional. He mentioned some of the programs of DAD, that we have 23, and some of them are particularly important. For example, the University Business Partnership and the SDG schools, and also the one which works on higher education management. I think what came out of all this is that for us to move into the future, we need to have future-ready curricula. We need to be having more dialogue and more intentional strategic collaborations, not just with other universities, but with industry. We need to bring them in closer with us. And I think I've captured most of what we've spoken about, and I will now ask our audience to have the questions so that the panels can answer the questions. Can I have the list of questions? Oh, there's only one question. Okay, can I have that so that we can have that answered? But if there are more questions, can people please write these either in the Q&A? Can we check? Oh, okay. I understand that some questions have been answered and online. Okay, so we only have one for live. Okay. Okay, and we have one here. So while I'm waiting for that question, the deputy, I also have to mention that the Vice Chancellor is here. Maybe he will have questions if he doesn't. All right, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Development Services.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I just wanted Dr. Omotesho or anyone else to share their experience of the kind of faculty retraining that has to take place to get to where all these things that we're talking about. What's been the experience? Because I know that all too often, you know, in universities, when you talk about tenure, most people who have tenure have been hanging around the university for about some 20 years. They are pretty set in their ways. They're coming from the curriculum and the pedagogy that we are challenging, and that is what they have used to deliver teaching, for so long. And so what has been the experience, and just to draw lessons, and how is it done? I can imagine that training programs will need to be redesigned, and I just want someone who's had direct experience to just talk about it. So it could be Professor Omotesho or any other person.
Okay, I think Professor Omotesho wants to speak. Can we unmute him?
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted. Thank you very much, Professor Asenwa. Very pleased to see you again. It's a good question, and I would draw an analogy. Some of us actually started our career in the UK with post-92 institutions, which are ex-polytechnics. And one of the characteristics of ex-polytechnics is that they concentrate more on teaching and learning because that's what they've been used to. They do research, but very minimal. So becoming university, then they have to be broad-based. Include research, include all the other elements that are really important, like enterprise agenda, innovation, etc. So how did we go about it? I think I've had the opportunity of doing that in 2 institutions, is by setting agenda. You need to carry them along in a way that they will see where the gaps are and where we are heading toward in terms of graduate outcomes, in terms of the position of the university, in terms of even our own employment in the future, because if we are not delivering, then we can be crowded out of the market. So my suggestion will be to recognize colleagues who have been set in their ways as key stakeholders, then organize workshop. It can be externally facilitated or internally facilitated, where figures don't lie, as they say. They can see where things are actually heading. Then the second thing is, everybody will ask that question: what is in it for me? If I don't change, what do I lose? If I change, what do I gain? So if they see what they gain as individuals, as departments, as faculties, as an institution, then that will enable them to start changing their ways. And it's not going to be a 180-degree change at once. So it's a gradual way. And we are doing what we call positive reinforcement as they are moving through that cycle to 180 degrees where we want them to be. I will be pragmatic. You can have 100% on the bus, but you will have a number reasonable enough to motivate others to do that change and for you to achieve results. So it's not a day job. We've got to be committed. We've got to live it. They have to see us demonstrating the change we want to happen. And then gradually people will come around and they will follow us. I hope that helps.
Permit me as a non-practitioner to share my own perspective on this. Am I allowed to do that, please?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I think one of the challenges that I think that we have in this space is really understanding what the gap is. So where are the faculties today, and where do they need to get to? And one of the ways to bridge or rather to better understand the nature of that gap is to really focus on the exchange programs where faculty leaders are going into partner universities to physically see how education is being delivered in organizations around the world. And having faculty leaders from international organizations coming into African universities and physically, again, seeing how difficult or how much easier or difficult it is to deliver what they do in their own space. I think that will create an important and constructive melting pot of ideas of how to bridge the gap and how to formulate practical and real life solutions that layer on to what Professor Omotesho has just laid out, ways of changing the way that our faculties operate. One thing I have seen, and I keep on speaking about this without apology, when our people see better, they do better. And when better is expected of them, they also step up to the plate. So it's about opening our eyes, or rather opening the eyes of faculty heads across our universities in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. I don't know, I would like to also ask a question. And again, this may go to the political space. As we want to improve faculty, is there a place for the National University Commission in this? Can they help to accelerate that change that we want to see? Because there's still a big factor in universities here. And they're into the accreditation of universities and so on. I'm asking now, do you think this can also be helped? Can this help to move that agenda forward if it becomes part of the accreditation process? I don't know if anybody wants to answer me.
Your question. Well, as a matter of fact, there is the NUC, and there are similar organizations in every country, and it's right that they are there, I think. So the issue is there should be a good communication, and both the universities on one side and such bodies like NUC on the other side, they should agree on certain things, and I think they could also support each other in this whole process of modernization. What should be prevented, of course, is that they work against each other. And sometimes in some countries you can witness that it can happen. And that's, of course, this is a catastrophe if it comes to that.
Anybody wants to say anything else on that?
Yeah, I just want to come in very briefly. I think from my experience, I did lecture briefly at in Nigeria before coming over to the UK. And the difference is between the regulation on the part of government and regulation within the sector itself. So I think NUC should really formulate the parameters and then they set the framework for accreditation, validation of programs, and allow the system to reinvent itself in a direction that will be most useful case by case. How do I mean? What constitutes NUC? They are all formerly academics in universities before they become leaders or administrators, as you may call them. Also, when they are sending out the accreditation panels, they are academics from other institutions that are coming into our institution. So if the mentality is not changed at the grassroots, we are just going to be recycling the same process. So we need to address the matter more at the grassroots. When the grassroots is on board, it's easier for us to actually self-regulate as a sector, higher education sector. And those who will emerge as NUC directors or ministers or director generals, they will have gone through that process, and the same mentality of positive change and curriculum that we want to develop will be future fit. That will be the little addition I will make.
Thank you very much. I have a question and a question here, and I have a comment. I think I'll take the comment first and then bring the question in.
Yes, thank you very much. Regarding this whole topic, I must confess that somehow there are two hearts beating in my chest. The one heart tells me, yes, of course, we have to modernize curricula. Our graduates need to be more employable and so on and so forth. The other heart always tells me, but remember what university means. It means it's a place where you can learn anything. It's a place where in Hamburg, Germany, you can study Yoruba or Hausa, or you can study German in Lagos, and so on and so forth. So the other heart always asks, what are we going to do with those subjects, which are not, engineering, which are not in the field of business, where you can easily work together with the job market and so on and so forth? Are we going just to give them up? They will die out? Or will we say, okay, only those ones maybe who want to become teachers, they can study English, French, Russian, whatsoever? Or are we going to have two different kinds of universities? One, the old style, where you can study anything, and then a newer one, let's call it University of Applied Sciences, where you more study towards the job you will take over after you finish your studies. So this is it's a kind of conflict which I see, and I don't have a solution for this, but I think we have to be aware of it, because it would be very sad if we just give up the idea of what a university means and what a university can be.
Thank you very much. I think I have two hearts beating as well on this topic, because really the literatures, the culture that makes us unique, and also can drive our creativity, we cannot afford to let them go. And I think in the future, as we think futures, we have to start thinking, how does this balance? Because right now we're focused on problems of solving problems of development, but development, I think we mustn't forget that the culture has to be part of that development to make us unique. I don't know if anybody has either in-house or virtually any Professor Senwa, you have something to say?
Yes, actually, when the session was going on, I was also virtually educating myself. So I was surfing, Googling, and looking up universities of the future. And I think one of the things that I saw was a model in Harvard where they are trying to forge interdisciplinary connections. So I think I particularly saw the example of having philosophy graduates teach ethics to engineering students, because you know the limits of engineering, the limits of any scientific, there are ethical questions, there are ethical standards, and you know, so I think yes, I also have always had those concerns. What happens to the classical subjects? What happens to history? What happens to religion? No amount of science is going to help us resolve peace, except you are able to interrogate this sometimes where people are coming from, the prejudices, the conflicts that are historical. It was nice at the onset of COVID, but it took the onset of COVID for me to know that the world had actually been in the place that we were in 2020, even some 500, 600 years ago. I didn't know. So really, there's nothing new under the sun. Yes, we will. I think it's a caution that we should actually have, but I think the other way we can look at it is universities of the future will all, the teaching of history could also then bring other people into the class and not just the traditional professor of history. It would also mean that the way you learn history is different. You do locations, you know, and all of those things. So it's not just the content, it's also the pedagogy. And of course, some of the content will change even in the classical subjects.
Thank you. I think I'll just add to that. Maybe then technology would allow us to experience history, you know, rather than reading it boringly, or I found it boring, you know, boringly on paper. Before we go, we're close to the end. I think we have just about 5 minutes more. There's a question here, and I think this is directed at our Vice Chancellor. In which way is the University of Lagos helping in the growth of young universities in the interest of the nation at large, i.e. collaborative ways?
Thank you very much. I want to say that we are about signing MOU with Borno State University. We have started a discussion with Akwa Ibom University. So what we want to do now is to see what we can do in that area of bringing in the young universities to collaborate with them. And even NIMASA, we had discussion with them in such a way that when we want to apply for research grant, we'll include them as part of our, in the network. So whatever can be done to encourage the young universities, we are ready to do it, but they must be ready to want to work with us. And definitely, even in this Lagos State Science Research Innovation Council, we are trying to bring in the new university to collaborate and work with us. So we are ready to work with the young universities. Instead of looking outside, it's better for us to look inward and bring the universities together. Then with that, we get stronger in applying for research grant outside. Thank you. And also the one for Borno State University is such that we'll be involved in the training of their academic staff at the PhD level and other related areas. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think we've come to the, I don't know if anybody else has any comments. Okay, so we've come to the end of this session. And I think one of the things that's very clear is that as we have huge opportunities to leapfrog into the future. I mean, for the future, into the 21st century, so to speak, and to modernize our universities and make our graduates more employment ready, more globally competitive, and to make our universities more future focused. technology is a major part of that. And I would say that one thing that COVID did for us was that it gave us a kick. We had been struggling with technology for quite a long time. But COVID, everything we had been trying to do for years, we did it within a year, because of COVID. So we see here COVID as a major opportunity that can help to accelerate some of the changes that we need to have. It's also made sure that we're more connected with the international community than we ever were. And we're thinking of new ways of engagement. I mean, we couldn't have had this kind of conference without a huge financial layout. And as one of the speakers said, COVID has allowed some leveling of the playing field. So we're seeing opportunities, there are lots of challenges, but it is very clear that if we're going to move this world forward to make sure that we have and improve, and accelerate development, it's not something that one sector can do alone. It's not something that one university can do alone. It's something that we will have to increase our ability to work collaboratively, both globally, nationally, regionally, and also to engage all our stakeholders. So before I leave, I would now like to hand over to the Deputy Vice Chancellor to give her closing remarks. Thank you very much to all our panelists. It's been a very wonderful afternoon. And I think we are all going home with a lot of things to think about and how to continue to engage to improve the education sector here. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll just go to the other side. Thank you very much. Thank you so very much, Madam Moderator, Professor Ogunsola. Okay, thank you so very much for anchoring this session excellently. Futures thinking, that's just what we said we were going to be doing. Futures thinking and seeing what kind of strategic opportunities, some in form of collaboration, that could come out of responding to the needs for the future. And I think that is what we have really achieved. I want to say a very big thank you to you. I want to say a very big thank you to our panelists. We've had Professor Camille Omotesho, who is the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Derby Business School. We've had Yvonne Ike. Thank you very much. We will be reaching out to you to see what it is we can do with Amara. And thank you for the opportunity that is offered African young scholars, as amongst whom are University of Lagos scholars. I want to say thank you to Dr. Mehul Senglajak, who is the Chief Executive of Learning Possibilities. And I'm hopeful that our cooperation with you will not just be in terms of engaging in this discourse, but that I take the name of your organization literally, Learning Possibilities. And I hope that we will be able to collaborate with you so that we also can learn from you how we can do better what it is that we are mandated and what it is we now aspire to do. So please, I hope when we reach out to you, you'll be ready to work with us. We'd like to think in terms of those mini courses, those micro bachelors and all of those new things. I mean, it's been learning for me. And even though I have my heart divided, just like Gerald, thank you very much for sharing with us. And Enrique, thank you so very much also for being here with us. I think I saw you come back on. I think you're speaking now from outside of the office since you had to leave. Yeah, I see. I think you're outside the office now. Are you back in? It was just a drill?
Yes, it was just a drill. I'm coming back in.
Okay, it was just a drill. Yeah, so like Professor Ogunsola said, this is the very exciting thing about now. I think we get it more real
because then we'd all have been cooped up in one big conference hall. And, you know, but now we get to see people in their spaces and we leave with them when the fire alarm goes off. So thank you so very much. And to participants online, I can see that we still have over 50 persons online, aside from those who are here with us. Thank you very much. This has been good. We continue tomorrow at 10 a.m. To our panelists who are online, we know it will be pretty difficult for you to give all of the time that we're going to be here engaged, but whichever of our sessions that you also can join, we think that they will be very insightful. And we will also have this on the UNILAG TV on YouTube, you know, and you will be able to also listen to some of the sessions that you cannot attend in person. Thank you very much, everyone. We carry on with the discussions tomorrow morning, and we hope that when we call on you again, you will join us, and that this is just the beginning of closer working relationships. Thank you.